I woke from my coma, and my sister asked, "How are you home already?" I dropped my hospital bag on the porch, confused. "What do you mean?" "They discharged me this morning." She stumbled backward and grabbed the doorframe. That's when my 8-year-old daughter Emily came running. "Mommy!" She froze when she saw me. "Mommy's dead." She turned to my sister Rachel. "You said my mommy was dead." The words hit me like a punch. I looked at Rachel for an explanation, but she just stood there frozen, tears streaming down her face. "I need to sit down." Rachel's face crumpled. "Emily, please go to your room." "But I want to tell Daddy about— Now!" she yelled. They let me in a minute later, where I headed upstairs to check on Emily. I passed my old bedroom where my husband and I used to sleep. Something told me to push the door open, and when I did, my heart stopped. A man I didn't recognize was sitting in my bed. "Who is that?" My voice came out cold. My sister Rachel was already behind me, looking up with red, puffy eyes. "That's your husband." Before I could say anything else, there were footsteps behind me. It was Michael. He saw me and froze. "Wait, that's impossible." He turned to Rachel. "Rachel, what the hell is going on?" She wouldn't look at either of us. "You saw the death certificate. We had the funeral." That's when I realized he didn't know. "How long have you been here?" I asked him directly. 2 years. She called me in January, said you'd passed from complications. "My love, I never wanted to." "I'm sorry," Michael announced, following my gaze. I saw the ring on her finger and turned to Rachel. "You married him?" She was crying, but I didn't care anymore. "You put our children through grief counseling," I said to Rachel. "You made them think their mother was dead. You made them mourn me while I was fighting to wake up. The doctor said you were brain dead," she started. "They said there was no hope." I had to grab the table. "I have text messages from Dr. Hanley every week, telling you about my improvements, asking why you stopped visiting." Michael's jaw clenched. "You were getting updates while I was sleeping in her bed? Did you freeze my accounts?" I asked, pulling out my phone. "I tried to get a cab from the hospital and my card was declined. Everything's gone. Savings, checking, even my retirement." Michael stood up fast. "Where's the insurance money?" Rachel went very still. "What insurance money?" "The life insurance. $900,000. You showed me the paperwork. You said it went to pay medical debts." I pulled out my phone and showed him my medical bills. All unpaid. "The hospital forgave the debt," I said flatly. "Charity case. Because my next of kin claimed poverty." Rachel was sobbing now. "I was going to fix it. I was going to— Going to what?" Michael's voice was sharp. "I watched my roommate die in that coma ward," I continued. "Her family visited every day. Do you know how many times my children visited in 3 years?" Rachel wouldn't answer. 12 times. The nurses kept a log. 12 times in 3 years. "I thought I was helping them move on," Michael said to me. "Every time I tucked them in, every school event, I kept thinking, this is what their mom would want." Rachel tried to stand. "I can explain—" "Explain what?" Michael's voice was sharp. "Explain the gambling? I found the casino receipts, Rachel. Hundreds of thousands. My mother came down the stairs with my son Ben. Why is everyone yelling?" She saw me and dropped her coffee mug. It shattered. "Mallory? But we buried you." Ben looked between us all. "Mom? Yeah, baby, it's me." "No." He backed away. "No, you're dead. We went to your funeral. I gave a speech." Rachel grabbed her purse. "I need to go." "Sit down," Michael commanded. "Nobody's leaving until we sort this out." Tommy came down the stairs. "What's wrong with Ben?" He saw me and his face lit up. "Mom! I knew it. I told you she wasn't dead. I told all of you." "Tommy, stop it!" Ben snapped. "Mom is dead. Aunt Rachel said the doctors— Aunt Rachel lied." Tommy ran to me. "I knew you'd come back." I never stopped believing. Michael was on his phone now. "Yes, I need to report insurance fraud and bigamy. My name is Michael." My mother sank into a chair. "The funeral. We had 300 people. Your coworkers gave eulogies. While I was 20 minutes away getting better, she said you died," Mom whispered. "Said the machines were turned off. We weren't allowed to see. She said you wouldn't want us to see." "The donations," Michael said suddenly. "The memorial fund in your name." Rachel's face went white. "We raised $200,000 for coma research." "Where is it, Rachel?" "I borrowed it. I was going to pay it back." "Borrowed?" Michael slammed his hand on the table. "You stole from a charity in your dead sister's name?" "She wasn't dead!" Rachel screamed. "She was never going to wake up." 3 years, Michael. 3 years of my life sitting in that hospital." 6 months, I said quietly. "You visited for 6 months. Then you told everyone I died." "Where are my photos?" I asked suddenly. "My things?" "Storage unit," Rachel mumbled. "I kept everything." "To sell?" I looked around my own house, not recognizing anything. "You erased me." My daughter Emily crept into the room. "Daddy? Why is Ben crying?" She still hadn't looked at me directly, like I was a ghost she couldn't see. "Emily, baby," I said softly. "It's Mommy. My mommy is Aunt Rachel." Matter of fact, simple, devastating. "I was sick, sweetheart, but I got better. Dead people don't get better." She moved closer to Rachel. "Make her go away." She's been alive this whole time, Michael said, his voice breaking. Your real mommy has been alive and trying to come home. Rachel was trapped. Everyone staring. No escape. Michael was already on the phone. Police? Yes. I need to report multiple felonies. Michael, please. Full story on channel, link below. I grabbed my phone and stepped off the porch while Michael kept talking to the police dispatcher. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped it twice. The hospital social worker answered on the second ring. I tried to explain, but my voice kept breaking. I just got discharged this morning. My family situation exploded. I need somewhere to stay tonight. She put me on hold and I heard clicking sounds like she was typing. When she came back, her voice was calm and professional. She confirmed my discharge in the system. The hospital had a partnership with an extended stay facility for patients in crisis situations. She could arrange a voucher for 3 nights while I figured out next steps. I felt relief wash over me, but also this hot shame in my chest. I needed Charity to have a roof over my head. I thanked her and wrote down the address she gave me. 2 police cars pulled up 15 minutes later. The officers got out and one of them asked my name. I showed them my hospital wristband and discharge papers. Rachel stood frozen in the doorway watching. The officer radioed something about confirming my identity against hospital records. The other one went inside to start taking statements. Michael came out and pulled out his phone. He showed me photos of the death certificate Rachel had presented 2 years ago. It had official-looking stamps and signatures. My hands shook as I scrolled through the images. Funeral programs with my picture on the cover. Obituaries from the local paper. Sympathy cards addressed to my children. I saw my own face staring back from memorial photos. My stomach turned over. The officers told us they needed to take initial statements from everyone separately. I was assigned to wait in their patrol car. I climbed into the back seat and the door closed with a heavy click. I looked up at the house and saw my children's faces in the upstairs windows. Emily was pressed against the glass. Ben stood behind her looking down at me. I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. Mom's car screeched into the driveway 20 minutes later. Michael must have called her. She got out and ran toward the patrol car with tears streaming down her face. She kept saying she was sorry and she didn't know. But then she said Rachel showed them proof and the doctor said there was no hope. I realized she was trying to apologize while also protecting herself from blame. I asked the officer in the front seat if I could use my phone to document everything. He said yes, as long as I didn't contact Rachel directly. I opened a notes app and started typing. Dates Rachel visited the hospital. The text messages from Hanley asking why she stopped coming. The 12 visits my children made in 3 years. I created a timeline of how she erased me. My fingers moved fast across the screen. Michael came out to the patrol car an hour later. He leaned down and told me through the window that he was moving to the couch tonight. Rachel could have the bedroom since the kids were used to her being there. He looked destroyed. His eyes were red and his voice was rough. I felt this complicated twist in my chest. Sympathy for how Rachel deceived him, but also anger that he didn't question things more carefully. Before the officers said I could leave, I asked the female officer about supervised visits. Could I request to see my children through some neutral location? She pulled out a card for family services. She suggested I call first thing Monday morning to start the process. Then she warned me that sudden changes could traumatize the kids further. I took the card and put it in my pocket. The next morning, I went back to the hospital. I met with the patient advocate who had helped me during my recovery. She remembered me and gave me a hug. I asked if she could print out the medical progress logs that were sent to Rachel's email. She pulled them up on her computer and hit print. 3 years of reports came out of the printer. Each one showed gradual improvement, brain activity increasing month by month, physical therapy milestones, speech returning. Every single report was proof that Rachel knew I was getting better. I stared at the pages spread across the desk. All this evidence that she watched me recover and still told everyone I was dead. I folded the papers and put them in my bag, thanking the advocate before heading to the emergency housing facility the hospital arranged. The room was small and plain with a bed, a desk, and a bathroom, but it was mine for 3 nights while I figured out what came next. I sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out my phone, staring at Ben's contact name for 5 minutes before I finally pressed call. He answered on the 4th ring, his voice flat and careful. I told him it was really me, that I was out of the hospital and wanted to talk to him, but he cut me off asking how he was supposed to believe any of this when Aunt Rachel had death certificates and letters from doctors. I started explaining about the forged documents and the medical records showing my recovery, but halfway through my sentence, the line went dead. I looked at my phone screen showing the ended call and felt this strange emptiness, like I'd failed some test I didn't know I was taking. An hour later, my phone buzzed with a notification from Tommy's number, and when I opened it, I saw a voice memo file that was 3 minutes long. I pressed play and heard his whispered voice coming from what sounded like a closet, the words muffled but urgent. He said he knew I wasn't dead because he felt it in his heart, that he never believed what everyone told him even when they made him go to therapy. He talked about the secret knock we made up when he was 5. 3 taps, then 2 taps, then 1, and how he still used it on his bedroom door every night before bed. He remembered the song I sang at bedtime, the one about the moon and stars that I made up just for him, and he hummed a few bars to prove it. Hearing his small voice reciting those private things that only we shared, I started crying for the first time since I woke up. Not the angry tears or scared tears, but the kind that come when something inside you breaks open in a good way. I played the message 3 more times, each time catching new details in his whispered words. The way he said he saved my favorite coffee mug in the back of the kitchen cabinet where Rachel wouldn't find it. Monday morning, I got dressed in the same clothes from the hospital and took a bus to my bank branch, carrying my discharge papers and hospital ID in a folder. The branch manager recognized me immediately when I walked up to her desk, and her face went completely white like she'd seen an actual ghost. I explained the situation as calmly as I could while she pulled up my accounts on her computer, and I watched her expression change from shock to confusion to something like horror. Everything showed as frozen with a flag that said account holder deceased, and she started typing fast, pulling up more screens and making notes. She told me this was clearly identity theft, and she needed to flag it immediately with their fraud department, then explained I would need police reports and court orders to unfreeze anything. I asked how long that would take, and she said weeks, maybe months, depending on how fast the legal system moved. I left the bank with a packet of forms to fill out and a sick feeling in my stomach knowing I had zero access to my own money. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael containing several PDF attachments, and I sat on a bench outside the bank to open them. The first document was the life insurance policy with my name at the top, and I scrolled through page after page of legal language until I found the beneficiary section. There was my signature on the change forms, except it wasn't my signature at all. The loops and angles all wrong in ways only I would notice. The policy was for $900,000, and according to the payout schedule Rachel attached, she received the full amount 18 months ago in a single wire transfer. I took screenshots of everything, my hands shaking so bad I had to steady my phone against my knee. That afternoon, I stopped at a coffee shop near my old neighborhood, needing caffeine and a quiet place to think through everything. I was standing in line waiting to order when a woman I recognized from the school pickup turned around with her latte and froze. She stared at me with her mouth hanging open, then took 2 steps backward and bumped into the condiment station. I saw her whisper something to her friend, and both of them kept looking at me while they hurried toward the exit. The barista asked for my order twice before I could focus enough to respond, and when I finally got my coffee, I sat in the corner booth feeling like everyone in the shop was watching me. I realized that being seen in public was going to be way more complicated than I thought when the whole town believed they buried me 2 years ago. Tuesday morning, I spent 3 hours on my laptop researching family law attorneys in the area, reading reviews and checking websites for anyone with experience in custody cases and fraud. Most of the sites looked the same with stock photos and generic language about fighting for families, but one attorney named Mara Winters had a page specifically mentioning complex custody situations involving deception and financial crimes. I called her office and explained my situation to the receptionist, who put me on hold for 2 minutes before coming back to say Mara could see me that same afternoon at 3. I showed up early with my folder of hospital documents, the medical progress logs, the forged insurance papers, and the bank statements showing my frozen accounts. Mara's office was small but organized, with law books lining the walls and a desk covered in neat stacks of files. She spent an hour listening to my whole story without interrupting, taking notes on a legal pad and asking specific questions about dates and documentation. When I finished, she told me she'd handled cases involving financial exploitation before, but never one quite like this, and she thought we had a strong foundation for both criminal charges and civil recovery. Wednesday morning, Mara arranged for me to give a formal statement to Detective Harris at the police station, and I sat in a small interview room with gray walls and a table bolted to the floor. The detective photographed my hospital wristband from every angle, then took pictures of my discharge papers and the medical progress logs. He verified my identity by calling the hospital records department and checking my driver's license against multiple databases, treating the whole process with the kind of calm efficiency that made me feel less crazy about the situation. He asked detailed questions about Rachel's visits to the hospital, the timing of when she stopped coming, and the text messages from Dr. Hanley that I'd saved on my phone. I showed him everything I had, and he made copies of all my documents using a scanner in the corner of the room. The whole thing took 2 hours, and by the end my voice was hoarse from talking. Thursday afternoon, my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize, and when I answered, a man introduced himself as Gregory Hamilton, from the insurance company's Special Investigations Unit. He explained they were opening a file on the fraudulent claim against Rachel and asked me to preserve all documentation related to the case. His tone suggested he'd handled situations like this before and knew exactly what patterns to look for, which made me feel like someone finally believed me without needing extra convincing. He asked me to send copies of the forged beneficiary forms and said they'd be conducting their own investigation separate from the criminal case. Friday morning, the hospital social worker called to tell me I'd been approved for a housing voucher through a county program for patients in crisis situations. The apartment was a small efficiency in a complex 20 minutes from my old neighborhood. Nothing fancy but mine for up to 6 months while I rebuilt my life. I felt this weird mix of grateful and ashamed that I needed charity to have a place to live in my own town, but I took the voucher information and scheduled a time to see the unit. By Friday afternoon, Mara had filed emergency motions with the family court requesting temporary orders for financial account freezes. a protective order preventing Rachel from disposing of assets, and a parenting plan for supervised visitation with my kids. She warned me the court system moved slowly, and these things could take weeks to get heard, but getting everything on official record now would protect me if Rachel tried to hide money or interfere with my access to the children. I schedule an intake appointment with the therapist Mara recommended for Monday morning. Dr. Lisa Chen's office sits in a quiet building near the hospital, and when I walk in, she offers me tea instead of making me fill out forms right away. She spends the whole first hour just listening while I tell her everything from waking up to the confrontation at the house to the police reports and court filings. She doesn't interrupt or look shocked, just nods and takes a few notes. When I finish, she explains that what I'm experiencing fits common patterns for medical trauma survivors, especially the feeling of being erased while I was unconscious. She gives me printed information about PTSD symptoms to watch for, things like panic attacks in familiar places or trouble sleeping. Then she suggests we should also get the kids into therapy to help them process what she calls complicated grief, the weird situation of mourning a mother who came back from the dead. I leave with another appointment scheduled and a referral list for child therapists. The school counselor, Mrs. Rodriguez, calls me Monday afternoon after Mara sent official notification that I'm the children's legal parent. She sounds careful on the phone, like she's worried about saying the wrong thing. She pulls up attendance records and behavioral notes for each kid while we talk. Ben had multiple incidents last year, angry outbursts in class, and 2 suspensions for fighting. Emily developed separation anxiety so bad she couldn't stay in class without crying for the first month of school. Tommy's records show he kept telling teachers and counselors his mom wasn't really dead, and they noted it as denial that needed monitoring. Hearing all this documented proof of how Rachel's lie damaged them makes my chest tight. Mrs. Rodriguez says she's available to coordinate with whatever therapist the kids see, and I thank her before hanging up. Tuesday morning, I meet Mara at a storage facility across town, a place with orange doors and security cameras everywhere. Rachel moved all my belongings here according to the address she finally provided. We walk through rows of identical units until we find mine. When Mara cuts the lock and rolls up the door, I see boxes stacked to the ceiling. We spend 3 hours documenting everything with photos and video. I find invoices tucked in a box showing Rachel sold my jewelry to a pawn shop and my furniture to a consignment store. The worst part comes when I open the photo albums. Rachel physically cut me out of family pictures with scissors, leaving strange rectangular gaps where I used to stand next to my children. Birthday parties, holidays, school events, all with me carefully removed. Mara videos each album page while I flip through them. Some photos are missing entirely, probably the ones where cutting me out would have ruined the whole picture. We load several boxes into Mara's car to take back to her office for evidence. The bank manager calls Wednesday morning with news about security footage. He found video from ATM withdrawals made on my accounts after I was supposedly dead. He emails me the files and I watch them on my laptop. The footage is grainy but clear enough. Rachel's face fills the screen at 4 different ATM locations, all on the same afternoon. She withdraws the daily maximum from each machine, $300 at a time. The timestamps show she hit all 4 banks within 2 hours. What makes me feel sick isn't just the theft, but how casual she looks, checking her phone between transactions like she's running normal errands. The bank manager says this footage will be forwarded to Detective Harris and the fraud investigation. Detective Harris contacts the funeral home Thursday, and the director sends over complete invoices and planning documents. Rachel paid for a closed casket service and gave very specific instructions for no viewing by family due to condition of remains. The invoice shows she paid extra for the director to handle everything without family involvement. I sit in Mara's office reading through the planning documents. Rachel chose closed caskets specifically so no one would discover there was no body. The calculation behind that choice makes me feel cold. She thought through every detail, every possible way someone might find out the truth. The funeral director's statement confirms Rachel told him the body had already been cremated at another facility, which is why the casket was empty. I spend Thursday afternoon at the County Vital Records office with Mara. The clerk searches her system while we wait. She confirms there's no state-issued death certificate on file for me. When we show her the document Rachel used, the clerk studies it for maybe 30 seconds before pointing out problems. The form numbers are wrong for the year Rachel claimed I died. The registrar's signature is fake, not matching any authorized signers in the system. The clerk makes copies for the fraud investigation and adds her own statement about the forgery. She seems almost excited to have caught such an obvious fake. Gregory Hamilton from insurance calls Friday with records his investigators pulled from 3 local casinos. Rachel had player cards at all 3 locations. The logs show hundreds of visits over 2 years with total losses exceeding $600,000. He walks me through the pattern, explaining this kind of frequency and loss amount is consistent with gambling addiction. Most of the visits happen during afternoon hours, probably when the kids were at the school. The insurance company is building their civil case against Rachel separate from the criminal charges. Gregory says they'll pursue recovery whether Rachel goes to jail or not. Saturday morning, I drive to a conference room Mara arranged at a hotel near downtown. Some of the Memorial Fund donors who are threatening to sue want to meet. 8 people show up, mostly coworkers from my old job and neighbors from my old street. They take turns expressing anger about being deceived. One woman says she donated $5,000 thinking it would help coma patients. A man talks about organizing the fundraiser at his church. I sit quietly and let them talk. When they finish, I don't defend myself or make excuses. I just acknowledge their right to feel betrayed and angry. I explain that I'm working with prosecutors to make sure Rachel is held accountable, and that restitution is part of the legal process. The meeting lasts an hour, and by the end, the hostility seems lower. A few people even apologize for taking their anger out on me when Rachel is the one who lied. By Sunday evening, I'm scrolling through Facebook and find multiple threads about my situation in a local parents group. The speculation is wild. Some people claim I was in witness protection. Others suggest Rachel and I planned the whole thing together. Parents are arguing about whether Emily, Ben, and Tommy should stay in their school, or if the drama will be too disruptive. One thread has over 200 comments debating whether the kids are traumatized victims or part of some scam. I close the app, but the damage is done. The social media storm could make everything harder for the kids at a time when they're already struggling with their own confusion. Mom shows up at my apartment Monday morning carrying grocery bags and a bucket of cleaning supplies. She sets everything on my kitchen counter and turns to face me. Her apology is different from the one she tried to give at the house. This time she acknowledges she should have questioned Rachel's story more carefully. She admits she wanted to believe Rachel because dealing with my coma was too hard. She doesn't make excuses or ask for forgiveness. Instead, she asks what practical help I need right now. I tell her the kids will need pickup from the school sometimes and maybe occasional childcare while I'm at appointments. She agrees immediately and writes down her schedule. I accept her offer cautiously, knowing trust will take time to rebuild, but practical support matters more than perfect reconciliation right now. Requested Reads is on Spotify now. Check out link in the description or comments. Tuesday morning, my phone buzzes with a text from Michael asking if we can meet in person to talk. I agree to a coffee shop halfway between our places, somewhere neutral where neither of us has history. When I arrive, he's already sitting at a corner table looking exhausted, and he stands up when he sees me like he's not sure what the protocol is for greeting your supposedly dead wife. We sit down and he starts talking before I can say anything, admitting he had small doubts over the years that he pushed down because he wanted to believe Rachel could give the kids the stability they needed. His voice breaks when he describes reading bedtime stories to Emily and telling her made-up memories about me, thinking he was honoring what I would have wanted. He tears up explaining how he attended every school event and helped Ben with homework and taught Tommy to ride a bike, all while believing I was gone, and he was doing his best to fill an impossible gap. I feel something unexpected listening to him. Not forgiveness exactly, but compassion for how completely Rachel manipulated everyone, including him. He wasn't part of the lie. He was another victim of it. And recognizing that makes the anger I've been carrying toward him ease just slightly. Wednesday afternoon, I drive to the family services office for my first supervised visit with Emily. The building smells like industrial cleaner and the waiting room has plastic chairs bolted to the floor. A social worker named Diana brings Emily into a small room with toys and a table, and Emily walks in clutching something against her chest. It's Rachel's cardigan, the blue one she wore all the time, and Emily holds it like a security blanket. Diana sits in the corner with a clipboard while I try to start a conversation, asking Emily about school and her friends and what she's been reading. Emily stares at the wall the entire 30 minutes, not making eye contact once, her body angled away from me like I'm not even in the room. I try talking about memories we shared, the time we went to the zoo and she loved the penguins, the Halloween she dressed as a butterfly, the songs we used to sing in the car. Nothing. She sits there pressed against Diana's chair, fingers twisted in Rachel's cardigan, and when I mention her 3rd birthday party, she finally speaks to say she doesn't remember any of that. The visit ends, and Diana walks Emily out, and I sit alone in that room feeling like I just tried to connect with a stranger who happens to have my daughter's face. Thursday. I text Ben asking if he wants to go for a drive, and he agrees as long as we don't go anywhere specific. I pick him up from the school, and we just drive around the suburbs with no destination, and after about 15 minutes of silence, he starts talking. He says he feels betrayed by everyone, including my body, for leaving him for 3 years, and the way he says it makes me realize he's angry at me too, not just Rachel. He talks about writing my funeral speech, how he spent hours on it and cried while reading it in front of 300 people, believing every single word about what an amazing mom I was and how much he'd miss me. Now he feels stupid and angry and doesn't know who to trust anymore, because if the adults in his life could lie about something this big, then what else might be fake? I listen without defending myself, understanding that his anger isn't really about me at all. It's about his whole world being revealed as a lie. Everything he thought was solid turned out to be built on Rachel's deception, and he's 12 years old trying to figure out what's real when the ground keeps shifting under his feet. We drive for over an hour, and I don't try to fix it or make him feel better. I just let him talk until he said everything he needs to say. Late Thursday night, my phone rings and it's Tommy calling from Michael's apartment. His voice is excited and he talks for almost an hour, sharing specific memories that only I would know. He reminds me about the time we built a blanket fort during a thunderstorm and stayed in it all night telling stories. He remembers the nickname I called him that no one else ever used, the one that was just between us. He describes exactly how I always cut his sandwiches diagonal instead of straight because he said they tasted better that way. Every detail he shares is perfect and accurate, proof that he held on to me even when everyone else let go. His certainty that I'm really his mom becomes an anchor when everything else feels unstable, and by the end of the call, I'm crying, but in a good way. Grateful that at least one of my children never stopped believing I'd come back. Friday morning, Mara calls with news from court. The judge granted temporary orders freezing Rachel's accounts and assets so she can't hide or spend anything else. He also approved supervised visitation with the kids twice a week at the Family Services Center, which means I have legal rights to see them on a regular schedule. It's not full custody yet and the visits will be monitored, but it's official recognition that I'm their mother and have parental rights. Mara explains this is a significant win because it establishes the legal framework for everything else, and for the first time since I woke up, I feel like I've achieved an actual victory instead of just surviving one crisis after another. The court system is finally working in my favor instead of against me. Saturday afternoon, my phone buzzes with a long text message from Rachel. It starts with an apology saying she never meant to hurt anyone and she's sorry for the pain she caused. Then it shifts into explaining how she was just trying to help the kids move on from their grief and give them stability during an impossible time. By the end, she's suggesting we're both victims of a tragic situation, and maybe we can find a way to forgive each other and move forward as a family. I read it twice, screenshot the entire thing, and send it to Mara before blocking Rachel's number. I'm not engaging with any attempt to make us seem equally responsible for what happened. She didn't make a mistake or handle a difficult situation poorly. She committed fraud and stole from me and my children while I was fighting to survive. There's no both sides to this story. Monday morning, Detective Harris calls with new information about the money trail. His financial investigators found wire transfers from Rachel's account to multiple prepaid debit cards that were then mailed to her cousin's address in Arizona. The cousin apparently cashed them and sent money back through different channels, which adds money laundering to the list of charges. He explains they're now coordinating with federal investigators because the amounts and the interstate transfers trigger additional laws beyond state fraud statutes. The case is getting bigger and more complicated, which means more agencies involved and potentially more serious consequences for Rachel. He warns me the federal investigation will take time, but assures me they're building a strong case. Tuesday afternoon, Gregory Hamilton from the insurance company calls to update me on their civil case. His company is filing a lien against Rachel's house, car, and any other assets they can identify through the investigation. He explains the civil case moves on a separate track from criminal charges, so they'll pursue recovery whether or not Rachel goes to jail. The insurance company wants their $900,000 back, and they have lawyers and investigators dedicated to getting it. He can't promise I'll recover everything, but says the lien and asset seizures give me a better chance than if I was pursuing this alone. Hearing that there's actual financial recovery happening helps ease some of my anxiety about rebuilding my life from nothing. Wednesday morning, there's a knock on my apartment door, and I open it to find a woman with a county badge introducing herself as a social worker. She explains someone reported concerns about my living situation based on Facebook posts, and she's here to do a home visit to make sure the environment is safe for potential custody arrangements. My anxiety spikes immediately as she walks through my small apartment inspecting everything, asking questions about my income, support system, and plans for the future. She checks the kitchen, bathroom, bedroom, looking for I don't know what, safety hazards or signs of instability. She's professional but thorough, taking notes on her tablet while I try not to panic. After 30 minutes, she confirms there are no current safety concerns, and the apartment meets basic standards. But the surprise visit leaves me shaken even after she's gone. I sit on my couch feeling like I'm being judged and evaluated from every direction, like I have to prove I deserve to be a mother to my own children. Thursday, I meet with the criminal prosecutor Jason Hernandez at his office downtown. He's younger than I expected, maybe late 30s, with a direct way of talking that I appreciate. He walks me through the possible charges against Rachel, including insurance fraud, identity theft, forgery, and theft from a charitable fund. Each charge carries different penalties, and he explains how they build on each other to create a strong case. He warns me that court proceedings are slow and stressful, with continuances and delays and procedural motions that can drag on for months. Then he asks if I'm prepared to testify, to sit in a courtroom and recount everything that happened while Rachel's defense attorney tries to poke holes in my story. I tell him I'm ready to do whatever it takes for accountability, that I didn't survive 3 years in a coma just to let Rachel get away with erasing me. He nods and makes notes, and by the end of the meeting, I feel like I have someone fighting for me who actually understands what's at stake. Friday morning, I drive to the hospital where I spent 3 years in the coma ward and meet with their compliance officer in a small office near the main entrance. She's a woman in her 50s with reading glasses on a chain, and she pulls up files on her computer screen showing every email and voicemail they sent to Rachel over 3 years. The logs are detailed, showing dates and times, and I see messages sent monthly starting from my 6th month in the coma. She scrolls through screen after screen of documented outreach attempts, and her voice sounds genuinely upset when she explains how unusual it is for family to completely stop responding. She prints out a 10-page affidavit listing every contact attempt, every progress update they sent, every voicemail they left asking Rachel to call back. I take the papers and thank her, and driving away I feel this strange mix of validation and anger, because now I have proof that Rachel knew, that she chose to ignore every single update about my improving condition. Dr. Chen meets with me that afternoon in his office and hands me another affidavit he prepared detailing my medical recovery timeline. He walks me through each phase, explaining how my brain activity stabilized around the 6-month mark, how voluntary movement started returning at 1 year, how speech therapy began at 18 months when I could follow simple commands. Reading his clinical notes makes me see my body as this fighter that kept working to heal even when everyone around me had given up hope. He points to specific test results showing steady neurological improvement, and I realize my recovery wasn't some miracle that happened overnight, but a gradual process that Rachel watched happen before she decided to declare me dead anyway. Monday evening, Mom shows up at my apartment carrying an old shoebox, and when she opens it, I see stacks of original family photos that Rachel must have missed when she was cutting me out of albums. There are pictures of me pregnant with each kid, birthday parties where I'm blowing out candles, holidays with me standing next to the Christmas tree holding Tommy as a baby. Mom's hands shake as she sorts through them, and I notice she's carefully labeled the backs with dates and locations, like she's trying to document proof that I existed in this family. I spend the rest of the evening arranging photos on my apartment wall, creating a small gallery that shows my life before the coma. Each picture I hang feels like reclaiming a piece of myself that Rachel tried to erase, and by the time I'm done, I have this visual timeline of my existence that no one can deny or alter. The funeral director calls Tuesday to schedule a deposition, and I meet him at his office where he provides detailed testimony about Rachel's specific instructions. He pulls out his notes from their planning meetings and shows me where Rachel explicitly requested a closed casket with no viewing by anyone. He explains that Rachel told him I had requested no viewing in my final wishes, and that the condition of my remains made it impossible anyway. His testimony reveals how carefully Rachel planned each step, choosing closed caskets specifically so no one could discover there was no body inside. He seems uncomfortable recounting the details, and I realize he feels guilty for not questioning Rachel's story more carefully. The premeditation makes everything feel worse. Like Rachel didn't just make one bad decision, but systematically planned my erasure over weeks of funeral arrangements. Michael texts me Wednesday afternoon with a simple message saying he filed for separation and is moving his things to a rental apartment across town. He sends the address and says he can't stay in the house where he was deceived, that every room reminds him of the lie he was living. I text back that I understand, but sitting in my small apartment, I feel this complicated grief over watching my family home completely fall apart. That house was where I brought each baby home from the hospital, where we celebrated birthdays and holidays, where I thought I'd grow old with Michael. Now it's just another casualty of Rachel's lies, another piece of my old life that can't be salvaged. Thursday, I sit in the Family Services Center waiting room before my scheduled visit with Emily, and when she comes in with the social worker, she's carrying crayons and paper. The social worker suggests Emily might be more comfortable drawing than talking, and Emily sits at the small table carefully creating a picture. When she's done, I see 2 stick figures labeled Mommy Rachel and Other Mommy, with Emily standing between them looking confused. The therapist, Catherine Myers, explains that this represents Emily's struggle to process having 2 mothers rather than defiance or rejection of me. She suggests we focus on consistency and patience rather than forcing Emily to choose one mother over the other, letting Emily's feelings evolve naturally over time. Watching Emily draw makes me understand this will be a long, slow process measured in tiny moments rather than dramatic breakthroughs. Friday, Ben agrees to meet me at a park near his school, and we sit on a bench while he talks about the funeral speech he wrote. He says he feels guilty, like he somehow participated in erasing me by believing Rachel's lies and speaking at my funeral. His voice gets tight when he describes standing at the podium reading words about missing me forever, and I can see he's carrying this weight of feeling complicit, even though he was just a kid who trusted the adults around him. I tell him none of this is his fault, that children shouldn't have to question whether their aunt is lying about their mother's death, but I can see the guilt is still there in how he won't quite look at me directly. Saturday, I'm pushing a cart through the grocery store when I pass the floral section and see sympathy cards on a display rack. My chest suddenly gets tight and I'm back in the hospital bed reading my own obituary, seeing my photo on a funeral program, watching my life reduced to a few paragraphs. The fluorescent lights seem too bright and I can't catch my breath, so I abandon my half-full cart in the middle of the aisle and walk quickly to my car. I sit in the driver's seat using the breathing techniques Dr. Chen taught me, counting slowly and focusing on the texture of the steering wheel under my hands. After 20 minutes, the panic fades enough that I can drive home, shaken but functional instead of completely overwhelmed. Sunday. I'm sitting in my apartment when anxiety starts building again, this heavy feeling in my chest like something bad is about to happen. Instead of letting it spiral, I try the grounding techniques, focusing on 5 things I can see like the photo wall and my coffee mug, 4 things I can touch like the couch fabric, and my phone case, 3 things I can hear like traffic outside and the refrigerator humming, 2 things I can smell like coffee and laundry detergent, 1 thing I can taste like the mint from my toothpaste. The panic actually recedes as I work through each sense, and I feel this small surge of confidence realizing I have tools that work, instead of just feeling helpless when anxiety hits. Monday, I fill out an online application for a job at a medical supply company, and 2 hours later, I get an email saying my background check flagged me as deceased in their system. I have to call their HR department and provide Mara's contact information plus hospital documentation, proving I'm alive, and the woman on the phone sounds genuinely confused about how to process this situation. The absurdity of having to prove my existence just to get hired makes me want to laugh and cry at the same time. Another reminder that Rachel's lies created problems in systems I haven't even discovered yet. Tuesday morning, I meet Mara at her office to work on the victim impact statement for court. She pulls up a template on her computer but tells me we need to make it specific to my situation, not generic victim language. We start with the basics, and I describe waking up from the coma to find 3 years gone, but Mara stops me after 2 sentences and says we need to focus on concrete harms instead of emotional reactions. She asks me to list specific things Rachel's lies cost me, so I mention the missed birthdays and school events, but she pushes me to be even more detailed. I pull out my phone and scroll through the hospital logs, finding exact dates when my kids had important moments I missed. Ben's science fair win in 5th grade, Emily's first lost tooth, Tommy's school play where he had the lead role. Mara types each one with the date, building a timeline of erasure that spans 3 years. We work for 2 hours, and I get frustrated because every time I try to explain how it felt, she redirects me back to facts. She explains that judges see emotional appeals every day, but specific documented harms carry more weight in sentencing. By lunch, we have a draft that reads like a medical chart mixed with a police report, listing financial losses, missed milestones, therapy costs for the kids, and the ongoing work of rebuilding trust. Mara emails it to me and tells me to sit with it for a few days, then we'll revise again. I read it that night and it feels cold, almost clinical, but I trust her experience. Thursday, we meet again, and I suggest adding a section about the hospital visits. How Rachel stopped coming after 6 months but kept accepting the progress reports. Mara likes this because it shows deliberate deception rather than just poor judgment. We revise 3 more times over the next week, each version getting tighter and more focused on provable facts. The final version is 2 pages long and reads like a prosecutor's brief, detailing lost time with specific dates, financial devastation with exact dollar amounts, erasure from family records with documentation, and ongoing trauma with therapy invoices. Mara prints it on official letterhead and I sign it, feeling like I've just documented my own death and resurrection in legal language. The preliminary hearing happens on a cold morning in early December. I sit in the courtroom wearing the one professional outfit I bought from a thrift store, watching people file in. Rachel enters with her attorney and sits at the defense table without looking at me. The prosecutor, Jason Hernandez, stands and reads the charges in a flat, official voice. 3 counts of insurance fraud for the life insurance claim and forged documentation. 2 counts of identity theft for accessing my accounts and forging my signature. 1 count of forgery for the death certificate. 1 count of theft from a charitable organization for the memorial fund money. Each charge comes with maximum sentences and fines, and hearing them listed out loud makes the scope of what Rachel did feel overwhelming. Her attorney is a tired-looking man in a rumpled suit who keeps glancing at his watch. When Jason finishes reading the charges, Rachel's attorney stands and says his client is willing to discuss a plea agreement. Jason nods like he expected this and tells the judge they'll need 2 weeks to negotiate terms. The judge sets a follow-up date and dismisses us. Outside the courtroom, Jason pulls me aside and explains that defense attorneys don't signal plea deal interest unless they know the evidence is strong. He says Rachel's lawyer probably reviewed the hospital logs, bank records, and witness statements, then told her she'd lose at trial. I feel a small surge of satisfaction knowing the documentation I collected is working. Jason warns me that plea deals mean lighter sentences than trial convictions, but they also mean certainty and closure without putting the kids through testimony. I tell him I trust his judgment and he promises to keep me informed during negotiations. A week later, Michael testifies at a deposition that will be used in the plea negotiations. I'm allowed to observe from the back of the room. Michael sits at a table with a court reporter and answers questions from Jason about the documents Rachel showed him. He describes the death certificate she presented, how official it looked with stamps and signatures. His voice stays steady when he talks about the funeral arrangements and the grief counseling he set up for the kids. But when Jason asks him to describe bedtime routines, Michael's composure breaks. He talks about tucking the kids in and telling them stories about their dead mother, how he tried to keep my memory alive by sharing things he remembered about me. He describes Emily crying herself to sleep, asking why her mommy had to die, and Ben's angry phase where he punched walls and got suspended from the school. His voice cracks when he explains that he thought he was helping them heal by being present and stable, by honoring what he believed I would have wanted. Watching him break down on the record, I feel something unexpected. Not forgiveness exactly, but understanding that Rachel's lies destroyed him too. He lost 3 years believing he was raising his dead wife's children as a favor to her memory, building a life with her sister because he thought it's what I would have wanted. The manipulation runs deeper than just stealing money. She rewrote our entire family history and made everyone complicit in erasing me. When the deposition ends, Michael walks past me without making eye contact, his face red and his hands shaking. I want to say something, but there aren't words for what we both lost to Rachel's deception. 2 weeks later, I'm back in court to deliver my impact statement. The judge allows me to read it before Rachel's sentencing hearing. I stand at a podium with my 2-page statement printed in large font so my hands won't shake too obviously. I start reading in a voice I force to stay level and calm. I describe waking up in the hospital after 3 years to discover I'd been declared dead, my children told to grieve me, my husband remarried to my sister. I list the specific losses with dates. Emily's first day of kindergarten on September 8th. Ben's championship soccer game on October 15th. Tommy's 7th birthday party on March 3rd. I detail the financial devastation with exact numbers. $900,000 in life insurance stolen. $200,000 in memorial fund money embezzled. My retirement accounts drained. My house sold. I explain the erasure from family records. How Rachel physically cut me out of photo albums and sold my belongings. I describe the ongoing trauma of being declared dead. How I still can't open a bank account without extra documentation. How my children struggle to trust me because they were taught to mourn me. I talk about the therapy bills, the supervised visitation requirements, the slow, painful work of rebuilding trust with kids who learned their mother was dead. The whole time I read, I don't look at Rachel. I focus on the judge and on keeping my voice from breaking. When I finish, the courtroom is completely silent. Even the court reporter has stopped typing. The judge thanks me and asks me to sit down. I walk back to my seat feeling emptied out, like I just poured 3 years of pain into 2 pages of facts, and now there's nothing left inside me. Rachel accepts a plea deal the week before Christmas. Her attorney worked out terms with Jason that include felony convictions for fraud and theft, which means she'll have a criminal record that affects employment and housing forever. The sentence is split: 18 months in county jail followed by 3 years of probation. She has to complete inpatient gambling treatment at a facility the court approves. The restitution plan requires her to pay back the full amount she stole, both the insurance money and the memorial fund, with a payment schedule that will garnish her wages after she's released. She also gets 200 hours of community service at the hospital's charity fund, which feels like poetic justice. It's not perfect. 18 months feels light for 3 years of lies and nearly $1 million stolen. But Jason explains that the felony convictions matter more than jail time in the long run. She'll struggle to get jobs, rent apartments, or rebuild any kind of normal life with fraud convictions on her record. The restitution order means she'll be paying me back for years, maybe decades. And the gambling treatment requirement addresses the addiction that drove her to steal in the first place. I sit in the courtroom while the judge accepts the plea and formally sentences Rachel. She cries and apologizes to the court but never looks at me. Her attorney says she's deeply remorseful and committed to making amends. The judge tells her she's lucky to avoid trial and prison time, then remands her to county custody. 2 bailiffs walk her out in handcuffs and I watch my sister disappear through a side door, feeling nothing but tired relief that it's finally over. Family court issues the parenting plan in early January after reviewing reports from the kids' therapists and social workers. The document is 12 pages long and covers everything from pickup times to decision-making authority. I get graduated visitation that starts with supervised visits twice a week, then moves to unsupervised day visits after 3 months if the therapist approves, then weekend overnights after 6 months. Michael and I share legal custody, which means we both have to agree on major decisions about school, medical care, and therapy. The plan requires family therapy with Catherine Myers twice a month, individual therapy for each kid weekly, and co-parenting counseling for Michael and me monthly. There are provisions about not speaking negatively about each other to the kids, maintaining consistent rules between households, and sharing information about school and medical appointments. Reading through all the structure and rules feels overwhelming at first, but then I realize it's actually a relief. After months of chaos and uncertainty, having clear expectations and boundaries written down means everyone knows what to expect. The judge signs the order and gives us both copies. Michael and I stand in the courthouse hallway afterward, and he tells me he hopes this helps the kids feel stable again. I agree, and we shake hands awkwardly. 2 people who used to be married now reduced to formal co-parents bound by court orders. Gregory Hamilton from the insurance company calls me on a Tuesday in late January with news about asset recovery. His investigators worked with the casinos to track Rachel's gambling patterns and found $300,000 they could seize through civil forfeiture. The casinos flagged large cash transactions Rachel made, which triggered money laundering investigations that froze some accounts. Gregory explains they recovered money from Rachel's bank accounts, a safety deposit box she rented, and some jewelry she bought with stolen funds. It's not the full $900,000 she took, but it's something. The restitution plan the court ordered will garnish her wages after she's released from jail, so eventually I should recover more. Gregory tells me the insurance company will send me a check for the recovered amount, minus their investigation costs, which comes to about $280,000. It's enough to start rebuilding, to put a down payment on a small house eventually, to fund the kids' therapy and my own recovery. I thank Gregory for his work, and he tells me he's glad they could recover something. After I hang up, I sit in my apartment staring at my phone, feeling the first real hope I've had since waking up that maybe I can actually build a stable life again. The memorial fund gets reconstituted in early February after the hospital's legal team works through the mess Rachel created. They appoint new trustees who aren't family members, set up transparent accounting with quarterly reports, and create a public dashboard on the hospital website showing exactly how donations are used. The hospital renames it the Coma Patient Family Support Fund instead of using my name, which relieves me more than I expected. I don't want my personal tragedy to be the permanent face of helping other families. The fund will provide resources for families with loved ones in long-term coma care, including counseling services, financial assistance for medical equipment, and support groups. The hospital asks if I want to serve on the advisory board, but I decline. I'm not ready to turn my experience into a public role. Instead, I write a letter they can share explaining how family support made the difference in my recovery, how the nurses who documented my progress and the social workers who connected me to resources saved my life. The letter goes on the website without my full name, just my first initial. It feels like the right balance between helping others and protecting my privacy, while I'm still rebuilding my own life. I move into a modest 2-bedroom apartment in mid-February. It's in a complex 20 minutes from my old neighborhood, close enough for easy kid pickup, but far enough that I don't run into people who came to my funeral. The rent is affordable with the recovered insurance money, and the apartment has a small balcony and decent natural light. I spend a week painting the walls and assembling basic furniture from discount stores. The kids come over on a Saturday to help set up their shared bedroom. Tommy immediately claims the task of building the bookshelf, insisting he can follow the instructions better than anyone. He spreads the pieces across the living room floor and works methodically through each step, occasionally asking Ben to hold boards steady. Ben organizes the kitchen with logical efficiency, putting dishes where they make sense and arranging the pantry by food type. Emily focuses on the decorative touches, arranging throw pillows on the couch in careful patterns, and helping me hang curtains in her room. Watching them work together without fighting, each contributing their own strengths, feels different from the tense visits at the family services office. Here in this neutral space that belongs to none of our old life, we're building something new instead of trying to resurrect what Rachel destroyed. When we finish, Tommy steps back to admire the bookshelf and declares it perfect. Ben surveys the organized kitchen and nods approval. Emily fluffs the couch pillows one more time and smiles. We order pizza and eat sitting on the floor because I don't have a dining table yet. And for the first time in months, the silence between us feels comfortable instead of loaded with unspoken grief. Our first family therapy session happens in late February at Catherine Meyer's office. The room has comfortable chairs arranged in a circle, toys in one corner for younger kids, and art supplies on a side table. Catherine greets each of us warmly and explains how family therapy works, that we'll talk about feelings and work on communication together. Emily sits between Michael and Ben, not looking at me. Tommy sits next to me and keeps glancing at Emily like he's willing her to participate. Catherine starts with an easy question about everyone's week. Tommy talks about school. Ben mentions basketball practice. Michael describes a project at work. When Catherine asks Emily how her week was, Emily says fine without elaborating. Catherine then asks if anyone wants to share something they're feeling about being together today. Tommy immediately says he's happy we're all here. Ben says it's weird, but okay. Emily stares at the floor. I say I'm grateful we're trying. Michael says he hopes it helps. Catherine validates each response and starts to ask a follow-up question about what makes it feel weird when Emily suddenly stands up. She doesn't say anything, just walks to the door. Catherine asks gently if she needs a break, and Emily nods. Catherine tells her she can sit in the waiting room, and Emily leaves, closing the door quietly behind her. I feel my chest tighten, worried this means we're failing, but Catherine immediately reframes it. She explains that Emily entering the room at all is progress, that 5 minutes of participation is more than 0, that small steps matter more than dramatic breakthroughs. She asks the rest of us to continue talking while Emily takes her break. We spend the next 40 minutes discussing communication and boundaries, with Catherine helping Michael and me navigate how to share information about the kids without rehashing our own hurt. When the session ends, Emily is still in the waiting room, reading a magazine. Catherine tells her she did great today, and Emily shrugs. On the drive home, I don't mention Emily leaving. I'm learning to measure success in tiny increments instead of expecting everything to be fixed at once. In early March, Michael and I sit at a coffee shop with a blank calendar between us, and we spend an hour filling in pickup times and school events without talking about anything personal. He writes down when Ben has basketball practice on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I add Emily's dance class on Wednesdays. We mark the days each kid will sleep at which apartment, dividing the week into blocks that feel fair without being exactly equal. When he asks about Tommy's doctor appointment, I tell him the date and time, and he adds it to his phone calendar. We don't discuss the past or our feelings or anything beyond logistics. The emotional distance actually makes it easier to focus on what the kids need instead of our own hurt. He pays for his coffee and leaves first, and I sit there for a few more minutes looking at the calendar we created, thinking how strange it is that we're co-parenting our children like business partners instead of the married couple we used to be. Mom calls me the next week asking if she can post something on Facebook about what happened, and I feel my stomach tense up because I'm worried she'll make it about her own guilt or create more drama. She reads me what she wrote over the phone, and it's actually good. She acknowledges that she believed Rachel's lies without questioning them enough. She offers to help other families advocate for their loved ones in medical situations. She doesn't make excuses or ask for sympathy. I tell her she can post it, and within hours people are commenting with supportive messages and sharing their own stories about family betrayal. A few days later, she texts asking if she can help with childcare twice a week, so I can attend therapy and go to job interviews. I agree to Tuesdays and Thursdays, and she shows up exactly on time the first week, bringing groceries and staying quiet while the kids do homework. The practical support matters more than any apology she could give. On a Saturday in late March, we all drive to the storage unit together, and I unlock the metal door to reveal boxes stacked floor to ceiling. The kids stand there staring at all my stuff packed away like I really was dead, and nobody says anything for a minute. I start opening boxes and pulling out photo albums, old toys, kitchen items I used to use every day. I tell them they can choose what they want to display in our apartment, and Tommy immediately grabs a photo of us at the beach from 5 years ago. Ben finds my old recipe box and says he remembers me making cookies from these cards. Emily touches a stuffed elephant carefully and asks if this was hers when she was little. I tell her yes, and she holds it against her chest without looking at me. We spend 3 hours going through boxes, and by the end we have a pile of photos and mementos they picked themselves. On the drive home, Ben talks about creating a wall in the apartment to show our family history, and having them help decide what story to tell feels more powerful than me trying to force my version of the past on them. The first week of April, I get an email from the court saying the final orders went through removing the deceased flag from all my government records. Social Security, DMV, credit bureaus, medical databases, everything now shows me as alive. It's just a bureaucratic database update, clicking a box in some system somewhere, but it feels huge. My new driver's license arrives in the mail a few days later, and I stand in my kitchen staring at it for 10 minutes like it's proof I exist. The photo shows my face thinner than before the coma, my hair shorter than I used to wear it. But my name is spelled right, and the status doesn't say deceased. I put it in my wallet and carry it everywhere, checking it multiple times a day like I'm worried it might disappear. Mid-April, I write a careful post for the community Facebook group focusing on the legal process and thanking people for their patience. I deliberately avoid blaming anyone or adding drama. I explain that the court cases are ongoing, and I appreciate everyone's understanding while my family works through this complicated situation. I hit post and immediately feel anxious about the response, but within an hour there are dozens of supportive comments. Several people message me privately to share their own experiences with family betrayal, and reading their stories helps me feel less isolated in this bizarre situation. One woman tells me her brother stole her identity and she spent 2 years fixing it. Another person says their sister lied about having cancer and collected donations. Knowing other people survived similar betrayals makes mine feel slightly less impossible. During a quiet dinner in late April, Emily reaches across the table and asks me to pass the salt, except she says Mom instead of using my name or avoiding calling me anything. She freezes immediately, her hand still stretched out, looking scared like she made a mistake. I just pass the salt without making any big deal about it, keeping my face neutral and my voice normal. Ben jumps in right away talking about something funny that happened at the school with his friend's science project exploding. And Tommy joins in asking questions, and we all pretend the moment didn't happen, because forcing it or celebrating it would ruin the fragile progress we're making. Emily takes the salt and sprinkles it on her food, and I see her shoulders relax slightly when nobody makes her explain or take it back. Early May, the treatment center where Rachel is doing her rehab calls, asking if I want to participate in a restorative justice session, where she can apologize as part of her program. I tell the coordinator I need to think about it, and I spend 2 days feeling anxious about the decision. I finally write a statement explaining that I'm glad Rachel is getting help for her gambling addiction, but I'm not ready for direct contact, and may never be. I set clear boundaries saying I don't want letters or messages or any communication right now. The coordinator calls back and says she respects my decision completely, and there's no pressure to participate if I'm not ready. She sounds genuinely understanding, not pushy or disappointed, which makes me feel better about saying no. On a quiet evening in mid-May, I'm unpacking the last box from storage, and I find the photo of me holding newborn Emily in the hospital. My face looks exhausted but happy, and Emily is wrapped in a pink blanket with her tiny fist near her mouth. I buy a simple black frame at the store and hang it by my apartment door where I'll see it every time I come home. It's not the house I used to own or the life I used to have, but this apartment is mine, and every time I walk through that door, I'm choosing to own my present, instead of being haunted by what was stolen. My final check-in with Mara happens in late May, and we sit in her office reviewing where everything stands. The kids' therapy is ongoing with measurable progress shown in Catherine's reports. Co-parenting with Michael is stable and functional with our calendar system working smoothly. Rachel's restitution payments started coming through the court system last week. Small amounts, but consistent. I accepted a job offer at the medical supply company that starts in June doing administrative work with decent pay and benefits. Mara closes my file folder and tells me she's proud of how I've handled everything, and I realize this might be our last meeting unless something new comes up. It's not a fairy tale ending where everything is perfect and everyone is healed and my family is back together like before, but it's real stability built on honest foundations. And for the first time in 3 years, I feel like I'm living my actual life instead of fighting to prove I deserve one. Well, that is the end of another completely average story. If you made it this far, I honestly do not know whether to be impressed or concerned. You might as well subscribe since you are already in too deep. We can call it commitment.